I noticed something the other day. In almost every single one of my videos, I'm wearing this sweater. Since I'm wearing that today, it's time for another video and a big hole. The idea is pretty simple. The yellow marked area here is currently filled with foam. If I take out that foam, I have another bedroom. The foam is in there for unsinkability of the lifeboat, which is nice to have, but another bedroom is also pretty nice to have. So, I have just cleaned up the space back here. I have made some rough markings of where the hull is underneath, where the hole is gonna end on that side. And now I'm gonna start doing some test drills so that I can get a better view of the inside, possibly remove a little bit of foam to then start cutting out the big hole for hull access. So, I've cut this relatively small access hatch to get a bit of a feel for the foam, see whether it's actually everywhere, where there is quite a bit of hollow area over there. Basically, the hole will, oh, my line is gone, end up ending somewhere here and go all the way back. So now I need to find a way to get rid of this floor that is between the actual bottom of the hole and the deck, as well as all these additional walls, in a way that it doesn't break anything that I still want to use. Plus, there are two stringers, as I've talked about in my last video. There's one here and one here. I think prism beam is the actual word for it, this guy. Plus this pipe, where I think a lot of wires used to go through. It's empty currently. So, lots of things to consider. I will now make a plan and then see what to cut up next. While I'm doing that, please make sure to subscribe. So, the cleanest possible way to cut this all up would be this attachment to the angle grinder, which plugs straight into the vacuum. But this is the maximum depth. I can go with that. And if you compare that to the thickness of the deck, it is just slightly less than that. I'll still try, even though I don't have high hopes, and see how far that brings me without covering the whole deck with lots and lots of fine dust. So, a nice and clean version with this guy doesn't work. The deck is too thick. So back to the saw. Alright, so here's the challenge. This wall needs to go. So I can do that either from the side of this little hatch, where there's a lot of stuff going on, or make a bigger hole here, basically extend this guy, and then use that for access. The yardstick tells you just how big the hole will be in the end when I'm done. It's 1.40 meters in total from that wall to the engine room. That will be the battery room later on. And the screwdriver is where that little wall that I'm getting rid of is currently located. Since end of yardstick to screwdriver is only roughly 60 centimeters, while screwdriver to engine room wall is more than 80 centimeters, that's a winner, so I have a bit more space to work in. I will start extending this hatch and working around the pipe, obviously, getting rid of the prism beams, and then start moving towards the bow, getting rid of that wall, and then I hopefully finally have access to all the hull that comes here up to the point where it meets the tank section. So there's another wall I'm not touching, but there's 3 meters and 39 centimeters that I can access in the hull once I get rid of 7.5 cubic meters of foam, according to my very rough, probably not entirely accurate calculations. So, the destruction has begun. Now we have a second hole going down into the wall or the deck between the bottom of the hull and the actual deck. And what we have here, that prism beam, is what in the original plans of the ship you can see here and here. And as much as I hate destroying anything that is structurally relevant on this boat, I've discussed this with somebody who builds lifeboats for a living, and they said it's fine, so let's cut some structural beams. Holy cow. I expected it to be a lot of work, but this is more than I thought it would be. This is what it currently looks like. My little access hole. And this is multiple hours of cutting away foam with about 0% of the entire volume out, and need to take a break. This is this is some hard work right here. Alright, after a bit of a thinking break, here is what I came up with. I think the size of the access hatch is making my life harder than it needs to be. So instead of my original plan, which would have been nice, to get rid of foam, then go into the big volume down there where it's very easy to do all the cutting from down there, I will try to open almost the full size of the hole right now in order to have the maximum area to access everything, and then see if it goes better. Otherwise I need to come up with some sort of tool. I saw another YouTube video of a guy using an electric plow in a much larger boat. Maybe that is an option, but first I'll try to get bigger access and try the same thing again. Alright, so my access is a little bigger, but I'm having a very hard time cutting through this prism beam here. Pretty easy now to access it from this side, but to get at it from the other side with the angle grinder, the deck is in the way on that side, and I don't want to cut in much more because it's getting close to the straight line that I want to have in the end, somewhere around here where the hole ends. So I will think about how to cut that without destroying anything else. Getting rid of this foam is even worse than that one because it's really hard to access. If you try to swing a hammer here, you either hit something here or it just sucks. Anyway, that's everything I can do for today, and I'll come back fresh as soon as I have time again, and hopefully thought of something to do with the whole prism beam thing. It's a new day and the cutting continues. I've bought some special saw blades for fiberglass, and I'll try those out to first extend the hole and then see whether I can make the edges a bit nicer. Tomorrow I'll have a brand new secondhand chainsaw and a saber saw. I think that's the word for it. It's a reciprocating saw. So those will be better to cut through the foam, according to lots of people in the comments. So we'll try both of those out. Alright, so this side of the hole is already pretty straight, and I think I can keep it like that. I made it slightly shorter by, I think, 8 centimeters than originally planned, so that this guy here still has a bit of support to rest on. It doesn't extend down into the hull, it's just here to probably support this narrow stretch with the windows. I'll leave that in. I've had a pretty hard time cutting down here because neither one of my tools fits in there. So the easy solution is to first get rid of the foam and this section in between. And as soon as I can actually properly step down into the hull, I can cut it from underneath. Right now, from here to there, it's just not enough space. Anyway, I have pretty good access to lots of foam now. I'll do the same thing that I just mentioned here with this prism beam, because from the side with the deck here and not a lot of space, it's very hard to cut it. So I've just shortened it, and as soon as all the foam is gone and I can actually step down in there, it's gonna be much easier. The hole is gonna extend to about here, which is slightly less than that hatch, but should be plenty. I'll see, I can always extend it out a bit. But yeah, here we go. Oh, and I've used the hole saw attachment, I don't know how you call that thing you put onto a drill, to get a bit nicer and sturdier corners than I would with just cutting straight lines. Yeah, so now it's time for the chainsaw to arrive and lots of foam cutting fun. All right, new day, new chainsaw, and let's see how the foam can deal with that. One last note before I get started. Buying a chainsaw actually means first buying a chainsaw and then spending twice as much on protective gear. But that's still a lot better than cutting your leg off. So here we go. The chainsaw works a lot better. It still turns out to be quite a lot of work. This is yield of about 2.5 or 3 hours of cutting. And although it looks like quite a lot, once you look down in here, it doesn't look that much after all. There is still, I guess, at least 4/5 of the foam left in there, but the deeper I can actually get in and the more room I have to work, the easier it is hopefully gonna get. Also, I found out that in some of the pieces there actually was a ton of moisture, especially around the hull, but I think the deeper down I'm getting, the more water I find. So it's probably not a good idea to keep that foam in anyway, because you never know how much water is down there. But I'll find out in the next session. So, after a lot of foam and obviously all these sacks down there, I have finally reached rock bottom. So, here we go. Here is the bottom of the hull, right there. And as you may see, there's water in there. So foam is swimming a little bit. These last big chunks of foam are quite a bit heavier and also pretty wet. Good thing I'm getting rid of all this. So here's one of these things that you don't expect that make the whole thing a bit more exciting. This kind of wood, cardboard, in between kind of stuff is completely soaked. So directly underneath a very thin layer of fiberglass in this section that has a kind of floor in between the actual deck and the bottom of the hull.
Yeah, it has some sort of core between the fiberglass that is rotten to the bone, so to say. I noticed the smell changing when I cut it, even through the mask. And yeah, there has been a ton of water sitting in here for quite a long time. So I'll see what I can find underneath. This pot right there has even more water in it, and the worst part is it smells so bad I just had to get out. So I need to get a different mask on, the double filter one that's a bit larger and sweatier, but no way I'm going down there again without a different kind of mask. So I guess that's the whole part of a lot of water and rotten wood and whatever accumulated down there. Need to get it out once and for all, and the deeper I'm getting down in there, the happier I am to take it all out. The first two segments out of 3 are done. So let me step down into the hull and I'll show you how far I am. So that's segment 1. And from here on, segment 2, which means there is one more behind this wall. And then after that segment comes another wall with a tank section that I'm not gonna touch. Which means right now I can get a pretty good feeling of how much space is down here. I'm sitting down right now, so as you can see, I can't exactly stand, but it's a ton of volume and it'll be just fine, especially with the additional space back there for some sleeping quarters. Yay! So, let's get back to work. It took me way longer than I care to admit, but now it's finally the last segment of this hull. And in the upcoming time lapse, if everything goes well, you'll see me removing 95% of the remaining foam so that I can finally conclude this video and start doing other stuff again. Let's go! done. All the foam is out, and I have so much space in here. Look at that. I can lay down only in the part that doesn't have standing height. So this can all be the bed, and all the way up front here we can have all the space with standing height. We can have a small wardrobe in here and have a full bedroom. I only have to do the same thing again on the other side, but let's not think about that yet. So what we've taken out is this little bit of foam here. So you can see half of a boat that wasn't foam filled before is foam filled now. We have 5 of the 1,000 liter garbage sacks and plenty of smaller ones. So everything is completely flooded with foam now. Still have to do a bit of fine trimming for this opening. Still need to cut a bit more, but the big part is done. So, thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and see you next time.